Well, our second speaker this evening is Ruth Westerby, in her role as convener of the Friends of Bartonsham Meadows. We have invited Ruth here tonight to talk to us about the concerns the Friends have for the future of the meadow, its setting beside the Wye, immediately adjacent to the city on its north bank, facing the Rotherwas Industrial Estate opposite. The Friends are currently undertaking a project which includes an online survey of users of the meadow. They requested the Civic Society's assistance by encouraging our members and those of our wider contact list to participate in the survey. This is what we have done. Ruth, most of us know the cattle have gone, and from recent press reports, Bartonsham Dairy as well. Over to you.
Thank you ever so much, David. Thanks for that kind introduction, and really fun to come after Catherine's presentation as well. Yeah, it'd be fascinating to hear about your research when it comes out. As David said, we contacted the Civic Society to ask if you could share our current usage survey about Bartonsham Meadows. So that's what I'm here primarily to talk about. And I thought I'd give you a little bit of background to this project and to ask you please to get involved with that usage survey if at all possible, and also to encourage you to get involved in this project in other ways if you felt interested in doing so. So I'm going to share my screen and run you through a few slides, if this works. So I think I am sharing my slides. Could you wave at me if you can see what I'm showing you? Great, thank you. So I'm Ruth Westerby. I grew up in Hereford. In fact, I grew up on Green Street for some of my childhood, and I was born on a farm in Herefordshire as well. But I spent the last 20 years or so in London, and it's only in the last few years that I've moved back to Hereford, and my kids go to the local school in St James's area, and I've been living overlooking the meadows. As many of you are aware, so this image that you can see here, I took a few weeks ago. It's one of the fields that sat under floodwater. So the crop that was on it was, it had previously been planted, and this was a self-seeded crop, so not very robust. And because it was sat under the floodwater, it failed. Historically, this farm has been managed under a 3-generation tenancy by the Matthews family as a dairy farm. And we knew that it was coming towards the end of that 3rd generation tenancy. Hence, we were interested, we saw this as an opportunity to get involved. The landowners are the Church Commissioners of England, and the project started off around February last year when, as you'll remember, there was some catastrophic floods at that time. So the whole of the meadows flooded to the highest level that it has ever flooded so far, I believe. And because this parcel of land is surrounded on 3 sides by the River Wye, any agricultural runoff and topsoil runoff contributes to the deterioration in river quality of the Wye. And it was my kids who prompted me to take action. They were looking at what was happening in the meadows and they were asking me about it. And it's very hard to explain to 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds what's happening. And one of them had a suggestion when the land was being sprayed that we should put up a little barrier wall so that the bugs couldn't get into the meadows and therefore wouldn't be affected by the pesticides. And that's a hard conversation to have with your children. So I decided to write to my local representative, Jeremy Milne, and the project has snowballed from there. Our vision is to transform this small suburban riverside farm from intensive arable agriculture, because although it was generally for the last 3 generations of tenancy, it has been a dairy farm. For the last couple of years, it was put to arable, which had disastrous consequences in terms of the runoff and the type of land that it's on. By transforming this into a regenerative land use practices, so the traditional way of managing floodplain meadows would be to have it generally for hay and to have aftermath grazing after the hay crop has been taken off. And by managing this type of land in that way, the benefits are phenomenal and widespread. Flood mitigation, because the flood water is kept on the land for a lot longer. Floodplain meadow plants have very complex root systems, so the water will stay on the land for longer. The root systems of floodplain meadow plants sequester carbon more so than trees. So this can provide flood mitigation from the downriver environment. We can sequester carbon if we don't plough it up and release the carbon. It would support biodiversity. It would improve the river water quality of the River Wye, which is very much needed at the moment. And particularly in COVID times, we've seen how many people have been walking this area, particularly because you don't need to drive. So there's no fuel, there's no pollution in driving out to the outstanding places that Herefordshire has that people can walk in. But this is right on the doorstep for many, many people. From the centre of town, it's what, a 7-minute walk, perhaps. And if this were managed as a traditional floodplain meadow, then this could provide sustainable agriculture and food production. So some of the images that you can see are by a student at the Herefordshire Art College, Julia Goldsmith, who's got in touch to share some of the art that she's been making around flood debris. So the bullet points that you can see on your screen, I took from our March newsletter. If you would like to go on our mailing list, then I'll share the link in the chat and you can sign up for our monthly newsletters. And the one that went out in March was pretty intense, I think, in terms of what I was pretty proud of what we've managed to achieve over the last year. We've been in many discussions with the church commissioners, who are the land owners, and with their agents, who've been managing the land on their behalf. We've spoken to the leader of Hereford Council, David Hitchener, and his chief financial officer, and they are supportive of how this project fits with their objectives for Hereford. I met with the land agent and walked the site with him alongside Herefordshire Wildlife Trust, who have supported us immensely from the outset. We have benefited from their expertise and encouragement. And in fact, Herefordshire Wildlife Trust have indicated that they would be willing to manage this site as the other sites that they manage in Herefordshire, including the Sturts and the Lug Meadows, which are similar floodplain meadows that they manage. The problem for Herefordshire Wildlife Trust is that they couldn't take on a short-term lease. They could only take this on if they were given a minimum 25-year lease. And even that is 25 years shorter than what they would normally go for. So Herefordshire Wildlife have been incredibly supportive of this project. And if they were able to take over the management of this site, I think it would have achieved many of the objectives that we set out. We've also met online, of course, with the Right Reverend Richard Jackson, the Bishop of Hereford, who has on our behalf been in touch with the Church Commissioners. Jesse Norman, the MP, has been very supportive and has liaised with the Church Commissioners on our behalf. And the point that came to this meeting was our current usage survey. I'm emphasising that it's current usage because we would like to develop a future use survey. And the purpose of the current usage survey is to capture what's currently happening with the land, although there is one box at the end where you can suggest what you might like to see there in the future, which we can then feed into our more complete, more comprehensive future use survey. We're also looking to democratise and consolidate our organisation as a community organisation. So we've been working on our constitution. And if any of you would be interested in becoming involved, that's another plug I'd like to put out there, because we are looking for treasurers, secretaries and things like that. So if this is the sort of project that you'd be interested in supporting, then do please get in touch with me. So the Church Commissioners have indicated that they would like a short-term solution to this land. Initially, they wanted an annual lease. We've persuaded them to go towards a 5-year or even a 6-year lease. The reason that they don't want something longer at the moment is that they're reviewing all of their holdings and they're looking at the carbon footprint of their whole rural portfolio. And there's a possibility that this land could be used as offsetting, by biodiversity net gain offsetting, which is allowed for in the Environment Bill that's currently going through Parliament. So I think the Church Commissioners are playing the long game, which is why they're not willing to offer us a 25-year lease at this stage. So there's a possibility for biodiversity net gain offsetting. There could be as well with the Brexit changes to land management. It's a little unclear at the moment what sort of value this land could accrue through schemes like the ELMS, the Environmental Management Scheme. But the Church Commissioners do, whilst they're not willing to go into a long scheme right now, they do see the value of this land for the people of Hereford. And I think we're persuading them of the vision for how this could work for agriculture, for the environment, and for the people of Hereford. So discussions are ongoing between the Church Commissioners, their agent, us, the Herefordshire Wildlife Trust, and a local grazier. She's not certified organic, but she would be interested in running a herd of Herefords on the land. But as you can see from the images, the land isn't in a grazable state at the moment. It would need reseeding. And the Church Commissioners indicated that they might pay for a herb-rich sward, but of course, yeah, those are tricky negotiations to have in terms of who would pay to get this in a grazable state. So cattle won't be on the land for a year or so because it would take that long to establish the sward, but hopefully we can, we'll have something more firm to announce. And as I said in the third bullet point here, we're definitely continuing to argue the case for a longer term solution to how this land is managed. So this page just shows you our current usage survey. If you go to our website, you'll see this page. And if you click on the link at the bottom, that takes you through to the survey that looks like this. And it's a range of multiple choice questions. I'll put the link to the survey into the chat function. And I've just got a few slides to show you where we crunch some of the data from the first week that we put the survey out. We put the survey out on about the 23rd of March. And within a week or so, we had about 166 responses. So these were some of the responses that we got. As you can see, the red here is people who travel to the meadows by foot. So you can see that this is something that's low intensity for travel. We were asking whether people swim in the meadows. There's a lot of campaigns to work for better water quality, and that's a key part of our project as well. I was very keen to find out quickly what the dog walking usage is, because that could affect cattle and hay, because you can't shut up hay. You can't shut up land for hay if there's dog fouling, because then you can't take the crop is devalued. And it was also about dogs and cattle and how they might coexist. So we asked a few questions about age, how often people use the meadows. And we're also interested in whether people use the footpaths, the permissive path, whether people use alternative paths. We're lucky that a student at UE who's working on a conservation degree, Reese Ward, he's working with us to develop a future use survey. So I believe the Civic Society had David Lovelace speaking with you recently. He has also been advising us, and Reese has been using some of the mapping technologies that David Lovelace has used as well. So it's incredibly cool. He can overlay different options. So we'd like to use his the mapping that Reese has been developing. We'd like to use that to express our vision to decision makers, but also potentially to put out as a future use survey where people can show what they would like to see. So on this image, you can see wildlife zones that could have dog-proof fencing. It's unlikely that you would get ground nesting birds on such a high use site, but if you don't try, you definitely would never get them. You could do things, if the kind of long-term visions, you could work with Welsh Water, who manage the sewage farm, which shares this little loop of the river, and you could put in reed beds so that you're clearing the water that way. So there's huge potential for what could happen at this site if we can get the buy-in that we're looking for. If you would like to get involved with what we're doing, the big thing we're asking today is that you fill in the current usage survey, but we are also setting up a committee. And if you have time and expertise and interest, then do get in touch with me. I'd like to hear from you. If you want to support us, you can just go to our website and join our MailChimp, then you'll get our monthly newsletter. And at the moment, we don't have a membership structure, but as we develop our constitution and become a community association, we may have an annual membership and would be grateful if people would join us. in the meantime, we're encouraging people to join Herefordshire Wildlife Trust because they are so helpful to what we're doing and putting a lot of time into this project. There will be many volunteering opportunities that we're working on. Himalayan balsam needs a good bash, and we're going to be running some plant identification walks over the summer. We'll be running we won't, but the Civic Society and Bartonsham History Group are going to organise a walk of the meadows, and I believe that may end up in the pub, which would be rather exciting with this, the year that we're just hopefully coming out of. There's a possibility of a mass swim from the Bassam. There's another organisation called Friends of the Upper Wye who have recently set themselves up, and they're looking at doing citizen science to test the phosphate levels in the river. So they'll be giving out test kits that you can do yourself. So if you go on our website, you'll find the links for Friends of the Upper Wye. And they are also working with George Monbiot to make a documentary called Riverside. So doing a mass swim from the Bassam, which is the historic site that people would swim from into the Wye, and where there was a swimming hut that's on the meadows. So we're hoping to organise that. And of course, plenty of litter picking opportunities will be forthcoming. If you're not persuaded, there are some amazing organisations out there that have put a lot of this data on how floodplain meadows can be managed and the benefits that can accrue from that. So not just the Herefordshire Wildlife Trust, but also Herefordshire Meadows have been quite helpful on advising us what sward would be beneficial to put in place. And the Floodplain Meadows Partnership is a brilliant open university research project, and they're working on the Thames, an area around the Thames at the moment, and they've received lots of funding for what they're doing, and their YouTube channel is great. They have huge amounts of resources there, so please do check that out if you want to find out a bit more about the benefits. Brilliant. So that was all from me, and I'm going to put some of those links into the chat. If you do have any questions, I'd be really willing to take them, and if I don't know the answers, I will put my email address or the address for Friends of Bartonsham Meadows, which I manage, and I will find people who can answer your questions if I'm unable to do so. So just thanks ever so much to David and everyone for giving me this opportunity to speak about this project.
Thank you, Ruth. There is one question from Barbara Ferris. What is the position of the Environment Agency on the meadows?
So I haven't personally been in touch with the Environment Agency, but I think that Andrew Nixon of Herefordshire Wildlife Trust is in regular contact with them. So I'm not sure.
Thanks. No other questions on the chat. Does anybody else have Elizabeth?
Yeah, have you actually, I know you've spoken with the Bishop, have you, because they're sort of separate, have you actually spoken or written directly to the Church Commission? Because I think the Church of England brought out some recent rules and things about, you know, eco-church and all these other things. So have you actually written directly to them at all, or any views on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's 33 commissioners, and I haven't written directly to all the commissioners, but we recently asked Jesse Norman to write to them on our behalf, and yeah, we prepared the paperwork for that endeavour, and he wrote to them asking them to support what Herefordshire Wildlife Trust and the Friends group wanted to do. So yes, we've contacted them through Jesse Norman, but I was actually going to wait for Reese's sort of visionary mapping so that I can go to them with more of a visual display of what this could be like. But you're right that it absolutely, there are so many agendas that this fits into. The flooding, the fact that the tenancy was coming to an end anyway. So if we can, it's like a kind of house of cards, and it'll go, and it might go the right way, and it's the time to try and push it, and it would be fantastic. It could be an absolute legacy project for Hereford.
I'm really supportive of this, but and I'm just wondering, are they seeking to use it for mitigation for the Three Elms development? Simply because I know that's ongoing, and that's Church Commission, and they've got huge issues with that one, with flooding and other issues, and it's completely incompatible with their eco-church rules that the Church Commission recently adopted. So I'm not. I just wondered, is that what they're holding it in the back pocket for?
We believe so, yes. The church commissioners themselves have not confirmed that to us, but their agent has done so. And we were concerned that from the get-go that this is their plan. For Herefordshire Wildlife Trust, they could not manage this site if it were formally tied into a mitigation scheme, because they would want their hands free to campaign for biodiversity on the Three Elms site, and not blueprint, give the green light to that through supporting this. But at the moment, Herefordshire Wildlife Trust see it as they can work on this project without detracting from what's happening at Three Elms. Of course, with the bypass now not going west, apparently the planning may have to, Three Elms could be many years hence, which is if it were to go ahead, which is makes things slow down for us, because I think the church commissioners, they can play the long game. It's their interest to do so.
Barbara.
I'd just like to make the point about connecting up with the pollution of the River Wye, and the fact that water authorities admit that when it floods, raw sewage is going into the River Wye, and this has to be a factor all along. And there's much more building in the enterprise zone and all over Rotherworth. The other field was always cattle, and Rotherworth's name means it's ideal for cattle and grazing because of the floodplain and the variety. And indeed, the water mills on the River Lug, it shows that we really have to consider the whole of the Wye, and this is very important. I'm fully behind you.
Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, I see this as a small part of a much bigger whole, but it's about, and the reason I wanted to do something is that it is on our doorstep, and it's hard to look at all the bigger questions, and the despair that I feel when I look at the bigger picture is totally overwhelming. So by picking something that was absolutely local, that my kids were asking me about, I felt I could get involved with this. You're so right, it fits into a much bigger picture.
Are there any other questions? I see no hands coming up. No. Okay. Thank you very much, Ruth. I'll hand back over to David. Don't go yet, Ruth. He's going to thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That was very interesting talk, and it's good that your thoughts are for the future, rather than sort of concentrating on the past and some of the issues which are there today, although clearly addressing those is part of the future. So thank you very much, and I'll be in contact with Bill Laws and Hugh Rees in the next few weeks, and I think we need to have the government confirm that the final stage of social distancing rules get lifted in June. But once but so long as they do, then to have an evening walk in the meadows in late June or early July, I think is a great thing. We've had a couple of walks around the city over the last 3 or 4 years. We had Jeremy Milne take us around the Bishop's Meadow, and then we had Nigel, chap who wrote the book about the ancient buildings of Hereford. But anyway, he took us around the city of Hereford about 3 years ago when he came. We told people to turn up at the west gate of the church. We expected 10. We ended up with 40. I think we had 10 dogs as well, but it was very successful. So I'm sure a similar walk around Bartonsham Meadows on a walk and talk basis is going to be very attractive, and is going to get a lot of interest and participation. So thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you on that walk. And thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, David. And I'll leave you to the AGM, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I've put my email address in there. I'll put the website in, and then I'll jump off the meeting and let you get to your AGM. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ruth. Again, I have Ruth's email address, so if you have no trouble retrieving it from chat, then just contact me in the next day or two, and I'll supply that.